3 spine-chilling true stories of terrifying new homes, unexplainable horrors revealed. Lisa stood in the living room of her new home, the remnants of her chaotic city life packed away in boxes. The sun poured through the window, illuminating the pristine walls of the quaint suburban house on Maplewood Drive. But beneath that picture-perfect facade lay an unshakable sense of dread, as if the very walls were whispering secrets of despair. This wasn't just a move, it was a leap into the unknown. It began as a distant thump-thump-thump. Each night, as her children drifted into a deep sleep, Lisa felt the world around her shift. It was as if someone was pacing the upper floors just beyond reach, their footsteps heavy and unyielding, echoing through the silence. At first, she convinced herself it was her imagination, merely stress from her demanding job as an emergency nurse and the challenge of being a single mother. Yet, those ghostly sounds nestled deep into the corners of her mind, awakening primal fears she thought she'd buried. Then there were the shadows. They flitted just out of her line of sight, darting past the corners of the rooms like a fleeting nightmare. She tried to shake them off, attributing her anxiety to the whirlwind of transition they were all experiencing. But her oldest, Sophie, would wake up drenched in sweat, trembling, whispering about a friend lurking in the dark corners. Panic gnawed at Lisa, her motherly instincts screamed that something was wrong. Each night grew longer, the darkness wrapping around her tighter until it felt suffocating. Exhaustion became a hand pressing down on her chest during her night shifts, and she prayed for nothing more than the mundane. One cold evening, she stumbled into the attic, searching for remnants of warmth. Instead, her hands brushed against stacks of dusty, old articles that told a different story. Each headline about children who vanished sent icy tendrils of panic coursing through her veins. Those innocent faces stared back, their fates sealed in the lore of the house. The unease amongst the friendly faces of her neighbors turned sinister. They watched her from across the street, smiles plastered on their faces, yet their eyes spoke of something darker. It was unsettling, like being in a quaint horror film where the townsfolk welcomed you with open arms but harbored secrets far too dreadful to share. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but Lisa couldn't shake the gnawing fear. It wrapped around her like the shadows that seemed to crawl with every flicker of the lights. When she finally confronted Sophie about her nightmares, her daughter's answer sent a chill down her spine. "Mommy, I can see them, they come for the ones who are not like us." Her heart raced, skipping beats as the facade of their fresh start crumbled. As the night lingered on, a chorus of thuds came from the upstairs. Each one felt like a warning, a foreshadowing of an oncoming storm. The house sighed and creaked, alive with whispers from the past. There was no escape, no easy answers. The battle for her family's safety was just beginning. What did the shadows want? Would she and her children become part of the house's tragic history, or could they break free from the looming horrors? The questions hung heavily in the air, thick with dread and uncertainty. The thumping intensified. Thump thump thump. It was becoming a relentless march, pulsating through the walls like a beating heart, echoing into every corner of Lisa's mind. She held her breath, dread coiling in her stomach as she peered up the staircase, where darkness loomed heavy. Was she losing her grip on reality, or was something truly waiting in the shadows? Sophie clutched her stuffed rabbit and whispered, "They're coming for us, Mommy." The innocent words twisted in Lisa's gut. A chill raced down her spine. What child would speak these things? She wanted to dismiss it, a trick of an overactive imagination, but the fear in Sophie's eyes was real. Lisa's heart pounded as she tiptoed up the stairs. Each creak of the wooden steps felt like a response to her silent question, a confirmation of her fears. Was this just a house, or was it a vessel for something sinister? She reached the landing and scrutinized the hallway. Shadows danced, darting just beyond her line of sight. Each flicker of the old light bulb threw their shapes into stark relief against the faded wallpaper. With every step forward, something shifted in the air, making the hair on her arms stand up. A cold draft snaked through the hallway, wrapping around her like icy fingers. She turned toward the first door on her right. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning her. Surely, she'd find only clothes and toys. It was just a room unless no. No more second-guessing, the hinges protested as she opened the door wider. Inside, the room was as she'd left it, untouched, filled with her children's belongings. But there was something off. A dark stain marred the wooden floor, a blotch that seemed deeper, darker than anything she could attribute to spilled juice or mud. She crouched down, her fingers trembling as they brushed the cold surface. It felt wrong like the watchful eyes of her neighbors. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice echoed down the hall. Panic sliced through Lisa. She whipped around, heart racing. "What is it?" she called back, her tone sharper than intended. "Look!" Sophie stood at the end of the hallway, pointing, wide-eyed. Lisa followed her gaze, and her breath caught in her throat. From the shadows emerged a shape, a figure cloaked in darkness. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, advancing toward them, silent somehow heavy with malicious intent. The room felt alive, air thickening as the darkness coiled and expanded, consuming everything in its path. Sophie screamed, the sound piercing through the suffocating atmosphere, a raw plea for her mother to protect her. What had she dragged her family into? "Get back!" Lisa screamed, shoving Sophie behind her, but the darkness loomed larger, tendrils of shadow weaving toward them like fingers hungry for flesh. A fierce wind whipped through the hallway, slamming the door to the children's room shut with a resounding bang. This was not just a haunting, this was a warning. Lisa grabbed her daughter's hand tightly. "We need to go. Now." They turned to head back down the stairs, breaths coming in quick gasps, but the house groaned as if it was alive, walls pulsating with an unseen energy that pushed against them. As they stumbled toward the staircase, the silhouette shifted, its form contorting grotesquely. Its hollow, unwavering gaze fell on them, and for a moment, time stretched. "Mommy, it's too late," Sophie whispered, a shudder creeping through her small frame. The shadows rushed in, and all Lisa could do was hold her daughter tighter, desperation clawing at her throat. The walls were closing in, and she could feel their cold void, threatening to swallow her whole. What had she awakened in this house? With that question branding itself into her mind, they plunged down the hall, fear propelling them forward into the unknown. But would fleeing even matter? The darkness followed, and it was hungry. And somewhere, just out of sight, a voice whispered through the air, "You shouldn't have come here." The darkness writhed around them, slick and suffocating. Lisa's instincts screamed at her to run faster, but her legs felt heavy, weighted down by an invisible force. Every step felt like wading through thick mud, and the cold, clammy air whispered secrets that made her skin crawl. She could feel the dread coiling around her chest, ready to spring. "Mommy! I can't move." Sophie's voice trembled, pulling at Lisa's heart like a tight string. She glanced back at her daughter, who was struggling against the grip of shadows that seemed to be wrapping around her legs like chains. "No!" Lisa cried, forcing herself to turn around. Despair rushed through her as she lunged forward, yanking Sophie free. As she did, a chilling breath swept past them, sending a rightful shudder down Lisa's spine. "Keep running!" Lisa shouted, her voice strained and piercing against the thick stillness. They sprinted toward the staircase, the wooden steps spiraling down into an abyss. Each step they took felt like a gamble between life and death, a desperate roll of dice in a haunted hallway. The shadows followed, clinging to their heels like bile. Lisa could sense their hunger. It was insatiable, a ravenous beast seeking to feed on their fear. She reached the bottom step, her heart racing wildly. They had made it to the first floor, but what lay ahead was just as menacing. Out the door, Mommy. We need to get outside. Sophie urged, flailing in the dark grasp of terror. The front door was ajar, almost mocking them with its promise of freedom. Lisa could almost taste the fresh air, the sweet scent of safety just beyond her reach. Hold on tight, she shouted, as they barreled toward the door. As they neared it, the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of hungry whispers that clawed at her senses. The wind picked up, howling through the house, as if warning them, admonishing them for their defiance. Suddenly, a wooden beam above them splintered with a deafening crack, sending merciless debris raining down. Lisa threw her arms over Sophie, shielding her from the falling fragments. The corridor erupted into chaos, splintered wood and dust enveloping them, blinding their vision. Mommy! Sophie squeaked, terror vibrated through her tiny frame. Lisa moved instinctively, pulling her daughter through the door just as the last tendril of darkness lunged for them. The moment they crossed the threshold, an icy wind cascaded into the house, wrapping around them like a protective cocoon. They stumbled onto the porch, gasped gulps of fresh air, hearts racing to escape the horror that was now behind them, but as they turned to look back, the figures of darkness stood still in the doorway, a mass of eyes and angles. They could feel the energy swirling, a promise of peril that echoed with every beat of Lisa's heart. What do they want? Sophie gasped, trembling in her mother's embrace. Lisa didn't have an answer. She felt the air shift, a heaviness in the silence that enveloped them. The whispers from within the house transformed, morphing into a single resonant voice, deep and unsettling. You will return. Fear coursed through them like ice water, freezing them in place. The shadows didn't just want them gone, they were a part of something far more sinister. Lisa squeezed Sophie tighter, determined. We'll find a way to beat this, we have to. But deep inside her, a question loomed darker than the shadows: could they truly escape? And as they stood on that porch, another voice joined in, a distant, haunting child's laugh echoing through the stillness. The day was revealing its horrors, but night was still far away. What would happen when darkness fell again? The wind howled, carrying with it echoes of laughter that twisted like fingers through the trees. Lisa clutched Sophie tighter, their breath clouding in the chilled air. The shadows shifted behind them, relentless watchers, seething with anticipation. Mommy, I'm scared, Sophie whimpered, and her eyes darted around, as if danger lurked in every corner. Lisa's heart ached. She was supposed to protect her, to keep the terrors at bay. But deep down, she felt the tight grip of despair snagging at her insides. Let us find help. The neighbors must be nearby, Lisa said, desperately scanning their surroundings. But the street, usually so familiar, felt like a foreign landscape. The houses loomed like silent sentinels, their windows black and empty, hiding untold secrets. Mommy, can we just go back? Sophie's voice was barely a whisper, laden with fear. No. We can't go back in there. The conviction in Lisa's voice surprised even her. But she turned back toward the door, unable to shake the feeling that something worse lurked behind them. Please, Sophie tugged at her sleeve. I don't want to be out here anymore. Before Lisa could respond, a flicker of motion caught her eye. A figure appeared in the distance, a silhouette against the setting sun. It shuffled, amalgamated with shadows as if it had been carved from darkness itself. What is that? Lisa asked, squinting. For a moment, she thought it might be someone coming to rescue them. But as the figure came closer, the heat from her hopeful thoughts dissipated. The figure was gaunt, its face obscured by a tattered hood. Its fingers were elongated, sharp, like the twisted branches of the dead trees surrounding them. Lisa could feel a wave of panic crashing over her. Mommy, let us go. Sophie cried, her eyes wide, grasping Lisa's hand tighter. But the figure raised its hand, palm open, revealing something glimmering, a child's trinket that sparkled in the dying light. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she squinted harder. Is that mine? She murmured, memories rushing in. The pendant had belonged to her sister, lost years ago, swallowed by the same darkness that now stalked them. "Mommy, don't look!" Sophie yelled, tugging at her to move. In that heart-stopping moment, the ground trembled beneath them. The shadows surged forward, rushing from the house like a tide eager to reclaim its prey. Lisa's instincts kicked in, and she took off running, dragging Sophie behind her. They darted down the porch steps, but the echoes of that child's laugh twisted through the air, growing louder, merging with hisses and growls. "Where do we go?" Sophie cried, tears streaming down her face, splashing against the cold, hard pavement. "Anywhere but here," Lisa gasped, urgency pulsing in her veins. The shadows chased them, a relentless storm of darkness, ever expanding. The air grew thinner, suffocating, and they headed toward the only beacon in the crushing night, a streetlight flickering weakly in the distance. "Mommy, I can't breathe." Sophie squealed, her legs faltering. Lisa's heart shattered at the sound. She scooped Sophie into her arms, running faster, adrenaline blurring her senses. With each frantic step, the shadows grew ever closer, their whispers beckoning, promising horrors she couldn't comprehend. Just as they reached the light, a deafening crack split the air. The light sputtered violently, flickering almost as if in laughter. Everything froze for a heartbeat. Then, darkness washed over them, devouring the weak glow. "Mommy!" Sophie screamed, clinging viscerally to her, and that scream sliced through the night like a knife. For a moment, all they could hear was the distance between them and the shadows, and the silence stretched like a noose around their throats, but within that silence, another child's laugh echoed, shifting in the darkness. It wasn't Sophie's. "Not yet," whispered the shadows, drawing closer. A pulse of panic surged in Lisa. With the stench of fear festering in her lungs, she tightened her grip on Sophie. "We need to go now." Out of the sadistic chorus of whispers swelled a new voice, deep and throaty, full of malice. "There's nowhere to run." As darkness enveloped them, an unholy shiver coursed through Lisa. One question pulsed wildly in her mind: what happens when light extinguishes completely? The shadows pressed in around them, an oppressive shroud filled with chilling whispers that dug into Lisa's ears. The deep voice echoed in her mind, morphing the night into a nightmare. She took a shaky breath, adrenaline coursing through her, and sprinted toward the flickering light, desperate to escape. "Mommy!" Sophie whimpered, her small fingers tightening around Lisa's neck, fear radiating from her body like a fever. With each step, the laughter grew louder, more sinister. "Come play with us, Lisa. We miss you," the voices teased, resembling the reincarnations of loved ones lost, their tones warped by dark intentions. Lisa shook her head, trying to drown out their calls. "Don't listen, Sophie." But the child was already trembling, her little body vibrating with fear. "Mommy, I can hear them." Lisa's chest tightened. "Focus on me. Hold on tight." She pressed forward, fueled by the instinct to protect. As they approached the streetlight, a gust of wind blew violently, extinguishing the feeble glow like a candle snuffed out. Instant darkness enveloped them as they stumbled to a stop. Lisa could feel her heart pounding in the silence, echoing like a war drum. "Mommy! I can't see!" Sophie cried, now in a full panic. Just hold on to me, baby." Lisa's voice trembled as dread wrapped itself around her like icy fingers. A moment stretched, thickening the air. Were they truly alone now? The laughter had faded, replaced by an oppressive silence that smothered her hope. Then came a slithering sound, brushing against the pavement, drawing nearer with each agonizing second. "Sophie," Lisa whispered. "We have to move. Now." They stumbled backward, and in the distance, a faint glow flickered back to life, perhaps another streetlight igniting. With little time to think, Lisa grabbed Sophie's hand, guiding her toward the light, each step forced and laden with terror. "Mommy, I'm scared." The words were a knife to Lisa's heart, but she pressed on, brushing past fear. As they bolted towards the light, whispers returned, seeping from the cracks in the pavement. You cannot escape. You are ours. No. Leave us alone. Lisa shouted, her voice fighting against tears. The air became heavy, almost suffocating. The shadows loomed, absorbing the echoes of her defiance. They crossed into the dim light. A pulse of safety surged within Lisa but only lasted a heartbeat. The glow flickered erratically, threatening to plunge them all back into darkness. She looked around. Was there nowhere else to run to? Sophie gasped, pointing to the light. Mommy, look. Lisa felt her heart drop. Emerging from the shadows, several figures materialized, their silhouettes sharp and twisted, dressed in rags. They reached out with skeletal hands, faces shrouded in darkness. They had childlike laughter, but Lisa saw no hint of innocence. Join us, they sang, each word dripping with malice. Run! Lisa screamed, yanking Sophie away just as a hand grasped at her arm. The touch sent ice flooding through her veins. They sprinted into the night, pursuing the fading echo of the flickering light, but the shadows lunged, darting like hungry beasts, eager to reclaim their prize. Mommy, I can't. Sophie's voice cut off sharply. Lisa whipped around, but in that brief moment, Sophie vanished, swallowed by the claws of the encroaching night, her terrified cries snuffed out. Mommy! Echoed from nowhere, reverberating cruelly against the walls of despair. No! No! Sophie! Lisa clawed at the air, heart sinking into an abyss of horror. But before she could comprehend the loss, the darkness thickened, choking her senses. Just ahead, the shadows pulsed, beckoning, and they whispered, seductive yet terrifying, "You can be with her again. What do you want?" Lisa gasped, struggling as fear dulled her mind and numbed her fingers. Come home. The voice brushed against her skin like a warm caress, luring her closer to the inevitable darkness. The tendrils of shadow reached out, teasing her with the semblance of sanctuary, and yet, she felt the chill of fear, but something within her ignited a spark. Lisa took a step back, recalling Sophie's small, terrified face. As the shadows closed in, she dared to scream, "You want to take us?" With a surge of desperation, she lunged toward the weak light, grasping blindly for anything that would anchor her in reality. Suddenly, the world spun around her. The light flickered ominously, blurring boundaries between safety and the horrific void beyond. The laughter crescendoed, and she couldn't tell if it was from inside her own head or the shadows that were closing in. What lay ahead was unknown. Could the dark truly claim them, or had she unleashed something much worse? Mommy, the whispers intertwined with her own voice. And then, silence. An end that felt like a beginning, chilling and raw. But what had she awakened in the depths of that darkness? Lisa's heart raced, each beat mimicking the panicked rhythm of her footsteps. The shadows danced at the edge of her vision, whispering promises of reunion with Sophie and taunting her with meaningless games of hide and seek. The flickering light ahead seemed a mocking illusion, flickering too fast for hope. It played tricks on her disoriented mind. As she closed the distance, the ground beneath her feet shifted unnervingly. She stumbled, crashing to her knees, the pavement rough against her skin. Panic surged. Would the darkness claim her too? Would she become another whisper in the night? No. I can't lose you, Sophie. She howled, but the only reply was the distant giggle, echoing back with a sinister glee. Clenching her fists, Lisa forced herself up. The world tilted, shadows swirling around her, vibrant and alive, almost tasting her fear. And then, silence. For a moment, she stood alone, her breath catching in the thick air, her mind racing. If there were no more voices, did that mean they were gone, or worse, they were gathering? The light caught in her peripheral vision again, wavering uncertainly. Mustering every ounce of courage, she charged forward. Suddenly, something cold gripped her ankle. She gasped, glancing down. A shadow, a dark tendril wrapped around her leg, pulling her down into the waiting abyss. Adrenaline spiked through her veins with renewed horror. She kicked out, struggling against the unyielding grip, but its icy fingers only tightened. "Stop. Let me go." The words flew from her mouth like desperate prayers, each plea drowning in the overwhelming darkness. Then a flash of color through the shadows. Bright blue Sophie's favorite dress. Lisa felt a surge of hope, a sudden energy flooding her body. "Sophie!" She screamed, and in a moment of instinct, she reached down, grasping at the witching tendrils wrapping her. Instead of fear, she felt a strange connection, as if challenging the shadows themselves. In that instant, the memories flooded back, pouring over her like warm sunlight dispersing the darkness. Laughter in the park, bedtime stories, the soft weight of her daughter's head against her shoulder. "Leave us alone. You're not stronger than our love." To her horror, the void hesitated. The darkness flickered, as if debating her words. The laughter shrank away, replaced by a chilling silence. But within that eerie quiet, she sensed movement. Forms began to coalesce in the shadows, twisted figures with hollow eyes and mouths that stretched in grotesque shapes. Lisa felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What were they? Were they memories or something far worse? "Sophie! Where are you?" And then she heard it, a small voice, tinged with fear yet unmistakable. "Mommy? Keep talking. I can hear you." Lisa shouted, scrambling against the pull to the ground. With every ounce of defiance contained within her, she broke free from the treacherous grip and ran toward the voice. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice rang clear again, echoing against the walls of the encroaching darkness. "Help me!" The shadows suddenly lurched forward, stretching out towards Lisa with desperate fingers. "Run!" It pierced her thoughts, the command sharpening her focus. But as she turned in the direction of Sophie's voice, an overwhelming weight pressed down on her heart. Ahead, an opening shimmered, the pale beam of silver light growing brighter against the backdrop of black. They were close, she could feel it, but danger lurked as the figures shrieked in unison, a cacophony of sorrow twisted into fury. "Come back," they wailed, their voices a dangerous lullaby promising forgotten peace but laced with doom. "I will find you, Sophie." The determination clawed its way free, battling against the terror permeating the air. Just as she reached for the light, a rush of wind lashed around her, yanking her head back into the pall of darkness. "No!" She screamed, the night swallowing her whole. She gripped her heart, breaths coming out in ragged gasps. And then, there was nothing but darkness. The shadows stood victorious, claiming her voice while Sophie's faint whimper faded into silence. What had claimed them, and what would remain when the darkness finally lifted? Lisa floated in an abyss of nothingness, the once familiar sound of her own heartbeat now an echo lost in the vast gloom. She struggled to comprehend her surroundings. What had just happened? Had she reached the light? A frantic thought stabbed at her mind. Sophie was still out there, trapped in the dark. A sound, soft yet sharp, pierced the silence. It was a whisper, delicate and chilling. "Mommy!" The voice danced around her, fleeting like a moth that zigzags madly toward light. Lisa strained to focus, yearning to grab hold of the familiar sound. "Where are you?" The words escaped her lips in a breathless whimper. The shadows seemed to thicken, pulsating around her, alive with a hunger she could almost taste. They were not just voids, they were voices, memories, and something darker. Lisa clenched her fists, determination battling dread. She had to push back against the encroaching despair. "Sophie! You're not alone. I'm coming." Each utterance fueled her resolve, and the shadows recoiled slightly, as if her words had power. With hesitant steps, Lisa moved deeper into the darkness, her mind racing against fears clawing at her consciousness. Suddenly, the air crackled, an energy shift. The question stood heavy: what if those shadows were not just collecting victims? What if they fed on despair, nurtured by fear? She could feel them circling, waiting for her to falter. The blackness thickened thick like molasses, chilling her bones. "Mommy!" Sophie called again, the urgency piercing through the dark. The voice unleashed a wave of adrenaline, sending Lisa sprinting forward, her feet pounding against the nothingness, searching for any sign of her daughter. As she stumbled forward, the ground shifted beneath her. Something moved at the edges of her vision, a figure, barely distinguishable from the shadows. A head tilted, hollow eyes boring into her soul. It grinned wide, mouth stretching impossibly far in a grotesque mimicry of joy. Lisa froze. It looked like a learner. It wore an outfit eerily similar to Sophie's. "Do you want to play?" It crooned in a sing-song voice, the innocence twisted into something dreadful. "We can play together, forever." "No," Lisa yelled, shaking her head fiercely. "Not my daughter. You don't have her." Her heart raced, panic mingling with rage. The figure laughed, and the echoes multiplied, twisting in the air like a living thing. "But she's much happier here with us. She's safe," and a sudden shadow lunged forward, enveloping the figure in darkness with a wet, sickening sound. Just as quickly, it withdrew, leaving Lisa shivering in horror. A roar of anguish erupted from somewhere deep, a sound of desperate cries tangled with laughter. She felt dizzy, images flashing before her eyes. Then she heard it. "Mommy! Help!" The voice was clear now, breaking through the chaos like sunlight piercing storm clouds. Lisa's heart swelled and shattered all at once. "Where are you?" she cried, her voice shaking. "Mommy, please!" The urgency within the cry only fueled her desperation. The shadows shrieked, rushing toward her, and she felt the temperature drop even lower. Sweat beaded on her brow, chilling into icy dread. The laughter shifted, turned hostile, as the last echoes of Sophie's voice faded away. The darkness coiled tighter. Cold fingers gripped her arms, pulling her back as though they wanted her to join the twisted beings lurking throughout. "Join us," a chorus of voices murmured, pulling at the edges of her sanity. "Give in." She's ours now. With a final surge of adrenaline, Lisa tore free. "You won't take her from me." She lunged forward, chasing the dissipating sound of her daughter's pleas. The air crackled, burning hot, igniting her heart with hope and a desperate longing. The light, was it there? Could it be more than just a figment of her imagination? Lisa surged ahead, the darkness threatening to pull her down again, even as she fought with everything she had. Outside her world, another voice emerged amid the chaos. "You should have never come back." The rush of cold spilled in around her again, and for the first time, she felt as if the shadows were alive, whispering secrets that would unravel everything she thought she knew. With another surge forward, the world shattered around her, leaving her with one harrowing thought: what would she face if she reached the light? And just then she realized something terrifying. What if the light wasn't the salvation she hoped for, but a darker trap waiting to ensnare her? The darkness thickened like a living fog, wrapping itself around Lisa, and it felt as though reality was unraveling at the seams. She charged through with nothing but hope and an aching heart. Her determination pushed against an unseen weight that clung to her like a shroud. The whispers morphed into a cacophony, echoing Sophie's name. Each call turned sour, twisted by the shadows. "Mommy! Please!" The echoes pierced the silence, a desperate plea that ignited a new fire in her chest. Then, as if the shadows conspired against her, a claustrophobic pressure gripped her throat. Panic clawed at her insides, a sense of suffocation wrapping tighter around her heart. She gasped, aware of the malicious presence lurking in the dark. Yesterday's relief was consumed by today's dread. This was more than just a nightmare. It was a war. "Stay strong, Sophie. I'm coming." Lisa advanced, her hands outstretched as if they could grasp the unseen threads connecting her to her daughter. Suddenly, cold laughter erupted around her, ricocheting off the walls of the abyss. "You'll never find her. She's embraced the dark. You should have left her alone." The taunting voice curled around her like smoke. "Shut up!" she screamed, feeling the bile rise in her throat. The shadows swirled faster, their mockery electrifying the air. A multiplication of figures danced just out of reach, darting around her like fireflies, yet their forms were grotesque and elongated, twisting deeper into vagueness. Each shape reminded her of a child, the innocence ruined, innocent laughter turned sinister. Breathless, she sprinted toward a flicker of light. It was dim, flickering, but it pulled her like a magnet. A fleeting hope glimmered at the periphery of her mind. Was she closer? This was not merely a physical journey but a fight against the very fabric of despair that sought to swallow her whole. As she neared, shadows lunged in bursts, like wolves striking prey. She felt their fingers graze her skin, icy and grasping. They whispered her fears, memories she buried long ago. A shadowy visage of her own fears, her failures as a mother, flooded her thoughts. You failed her. A chorus yelled, synchronizing their voices into a haunting refrain. No. She screamed back, pushing through the memory-laden onslaught. Each step forward was heavier than the last, her legs trembling, but she would not yield. Finally, the light became a solid presence, brightening the gloom. But instead of warmth, it radiated an unsettling strength. Lisa hesitated, the chill of uncertainty creeping back in. What if this light was a trap? What if it was another cruel joke played by the entities lurking in the dark? The walls of her sanity flickered, and for a split second, the facade of the brightness twisted, a reflection of a different reality unfolded. She saw Sophie there, but twisted. The light behind her angelic form warped her features, turning her smile into something dark, something accusing. Mommy. Sophie reached out, her voice now a siren's song, luring Lisa toward the blinding glow. Lisa's heart shattered at the vision of her daughter, desperate and pleading, but the sound waves of laughter poured thickly from the shadows, attempting to drown out the truth. She cannot be saved. She belongs to us. No. Lisa lunged into the light, but insecurities and horror twisted at her ankles, pulling her back, trying to reclaim her into the darkness. The moment she broke through, the pain exploded behind her eyes. Dark currents lashed out, a final attempt to snatch her back. She staggered forward, fighting against the tide of shadow and despair, crying out for her daughter. Everything around her shifted, becoming a whirlwind of white and dark until the world broke apart. And then, there was silence. But in that silence, a voice whispered, soft yet piercing. You came for her, but did you bring the darkness with you? As the stillness enveloped her, Lisa's heart raced. She realized with chilling clarity that she might be in the grip of a nightmare much larger and darker than she had ever imagined. What awaited her now, as she stood on the threshold of light, held the weight of those shadows behind her and a truth that could bury them both? Light surrounded Lisa, yet it felt more like a cage than salvation. The blinding brightness pressed against her, mingling with the shadows that loomed just beyond the edge of her vision. Fear gripped her tightly, wrapping around her like an anchor, dragging her deeper into an abyss. She blinked, attempting to focus. Was Sophie still there, hidden in the glow? Lisa felt a surge of anger at the mocking laughter echoing through the silence, taunting her. The shadows, ever present, seemed to pulse with malevolence, eager to draw her back into their depths. Where are you, Sophie? Her voice trembled, the question escaping her lips like a desperate prayer. In response, the light flickered, revealing fleeting glimpses, shadows shifting in the corners of her mind. Faces appeared and vanished, morphing from those of children into grotesque, snarling forms. A bone-chilling understanding rippled through her, the darkness thrived on her despair. Each fear, every faint hope, became a pawn in its dangerous game. Mommy, there it was again, that familiar voice. It beckoned her sweetly, but the tone was off, twisted. Mommy, come play. The laughter rose, ramping up in volume like a storm. The weight of despair became unbearable as memories flooded back. Lisa remembered afternoons spent crafting, laughter bouncing off the walls of their home, a garden filled with blooming flowers and the promise of a bright future. But that memory faded away under the relentless pressure of the dark. She gritted her teeth, willing herself to push forward. The need to find Sophie eclipsed everything else, a raw instinct driving her toward the flickering light. Maybe it was a path to her daughter, or perhaps it was a descent into madness. Either way, she had to know. Just tell me where she is. But the shadows only snickered. They transformed, swirling around her, forming a vortex that throbbed with hidden desires. You think you can save her? You'll only bring more darkness to yourself. Lisa fought through the torment, rage and fear intertwining within. You don't understand. I will not lose her. And suddenly, the light pulsated wildly, revealing an image that stopped Lisa cold. There she was, Sophie, her angelic face now marred by sorrowful eyes that stared straight into Lisa's soul. Help me, the whisper danced in the air, but dread knotted in Lisa's gut. Something was off. The innocence she held so dear felt tainted. No. The screams echoed, both inside her mind and from the shadows pressing against her. Each cry melded into the next, an anguished symphony. With all her strength, she lunged toward Sophie's projection, desperate to grasp the child she loved more than anything. As her fingers brushed the light, the ground trembled beneath her. A shivering crack ripped through the silence, revealing a chasm of swirling black beneath her feet. In that moment, Lisa realized the shadows were pulling her down. The very ground was a lie, and Sophie's figure flickered like a faded photograph in the wind. Mommy, please. Sophie's voice fractured, echoing against the walls of her resolve. The air turned cold, and despair settled heavily on Lisa's shoulders. The brief hope dissolved, leaving only the bleak certainty that she had opened a door into the unimaginable. What choice did she have now? Could she fight to hold on to the light, or would the darkness consume both her and her daughter? The thumping in her chest quickened as she swayed on the precipice. She sensed a terrible truth at her feet, waiting to swallow her whole. No matter what she chose, a reckoning awaited. Step forward, Lisa. The shadows hissed, a cruel invitation to be devoured. She hesitated, heart racing, knowing that every moment allowed the darkness to tighten its grip. What if she was too late? And then, a scream sliced through the chaos, a chilling, heart-stopping wail that surged through the air. It was Sophie. Mommy, help. The sound fractured everything as Lisa realized this wasn't just a battle for her daughter, it was a fight against the very essence of evil rising to drown them both. What do I do? She screamed into the darkness, her voice raw with desperation, and in the turbulent silence that followed, a response slithered back to her, dripping with malice. Embrace the fear. Only then will you truly know. Was there still time to save Sophie, or was she caught in a web of her own making? The question echoed, haunting her every step as she stood on the brink of uncertainty. Lisa's heart pounded in her chest. It felt as if shadows were reaching out, eager to snatch her back into their clutches. The voices had grown louder, melding into a chaotic soundtrack of despair. Mommy. Sophie's voice reverberated through the air, a beacon of her purpose, and yet it twisted and turned as if the darkness were toying with her hope. Stay with me, Sophie. I'm coming. Lisa cried, determination surging within her as she steadied herself. She knew this was a moment of reckoning, a point wherein fear clashed with the fierce love for her daughter. But which would win out? Taking a deep breath, Lisa forced herself to shut out the sickening whispers swirling around, clawing at the edges of her sanity. You cannot save her. She's ours. She felt an overwhelming wave of anger rise, a fresh determination igniting her spirit. I will not lose her. The declaration roared from her lips, shaking the very foundation of the shadows surrounding her. We are stronger than this darkness. In that instant, she pushed toward the flickering light, a bastion against the void. And just as she reached out, she slipped. Darkness surged at her ankles, gurgling hungrily, the angered wails of the shadows swirled around her like a storm. But she didn't let go, digging her fingers into the icy ground beneath her. I want to let you take her. The shadows screeched, and a moment later, a wall of chilling horror struck her mind. Images of fear, abandonment, and failure crashed around her like waves, rising to drag her down. "No! You won't drown me in despair!" Lisa shouted back, a surge of courage pulsing through her. The light pulsed again, brighter this time, and she felt herself drawn towards it like a moth to a flame. The loveless laughter faded, if only for an instant. "Mommy! Help!" Sophie's voice rang through the abyss anew, so close, so vivid, and untainted. In that moment, Lisa lunged forward, casting herself into the light with fervor, willing herself to break free of the dark's grasp. As she did, the cold dissipated and warmth wrapped around her, its brightness blinding yet serene. The oppressive weight lifted, and she felt free. Helplessness transformed into a sharp clarity, and she opened her eyes. The world around her shifted, colors returning, filling space with life. She was standing in a field, vibrant and wide. The air brushed against her skin, sweet and cooling, fragrant with blooming flowers. But there was a heaviness looming still over the horizon. "Mommy!" Sophie's voice was clearer now, beckoning. Almost instinctively, Lisa turned to follow the sound, her heart racing once again. This was not just a place of light, it felt like an in-between, a threshold. Amidst the wildflowers, there stood a figure small, familiar, and sparkling bright. Sophie? This feeling of wrongness gripped Lisa's throat. The figure before her smiled, a reflection of innocent joy, yet hidden depth stirred behind those bright eyes. "Come play with me, Mommy." Sophie chirped, her voice dancing on every breeze, a melody wrapped around familiarity, but something felt off. Lisa took a cautious step forward, adrenaline racing through her veins. "Sophie, are you really?" But the shadows loomed in the corners of her mind, whispering ominously, "What if this is not what you think?" They clawed for her attention, seeking to draw her back into their terror. Sophie reached out her arms. "I waited for you. I'm safe here." But the detachment in her words struck Lisa's heart with a chill. "No. This isn't what you want." This she hesitated, glancing at the swath of flowers that pulsed with color but suffocated with dark intentions. "You can't be happy here." In that moment, Sophie's bright visage splintered, darkening around the edges. "But Mommy, you came back. You left me." "No." A quick rush of fierce motherly instincts propelled Lisa forward. "I was trying to protect you. I let the darkness swallow me." A pang of guilt wrapped around her heart like a vice. The child she loved had become a reflection of everything she feared. "Leave me!" Sophie screamed one last time, and an unholy terror erupted. Fracturing the landscape, the shadows returning to shriek their desires. Lisa's heart sank as she felt the ground shift again, the very realm around her threatening to dissolve into chaos. Fighting against doubt, she reached forward, grasping Sophie's small hands. "You are more than this. We are stronger than the darkness." With every word, she poured her love, vulnerability, hope, and a mother's fierce will into her embrace, and as their hands locked together, an explosion of light enveloped them, swirling around like a protective cocoon. The chaos surged, twisting shadows rampaging but faltering before the love binding them. "Together, we fight!" Lisa cried, and the shadows recoiled, hissed, and screeched, yet the light brightened, illuminating the depths of darkness around them. Gradually, clarity returned. Sophie's laughter pierced through the fog, warming Lisa's heart, banishing the shadows to nothingness. "Mommy, let us go." Sophie beamed, her innocent voice resonating with the true light, and in that moment, they surged forward, propelled by the fierce bond between mother and daughter, a love that could not be extinguished, a light that would always guide them home. As they crossed through the threshold of the light, the darkness shattered, dissolving like smoke. Hand in hand, Lisa and Sophie emerged into a reality filled with warmth and laughter, a place where shadows could no longer encroach. With a final glance back at the fading darkness, Lisa whispered a promise to herself: never again. They stepped forward into a new tomorrow, stronger, united, ready to meet whatever came next together, and somewhere in the distance, the sun began to rise, casting out the last remnants of night. Remember, fear only holds power when you let it. A mother's love can conquer even the darkest of shadows. Now, before you go, listen up. This is your moment. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on more exclusive stories that twist your heart and thrill your senses. And smash that like button to feed the algorithm and keep these tales alive. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this hair-raising conclusion. Let us hear your thoughts, your what-ifs, and everything in between, and don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling ending. True fans like you know how much support means to this channel, so let us keep the adventure alive together.